Hello, everybody out there in Guitar Moderne land. I hope everybody's well, has been vaccinated. Things are starting to open up. People are playing gigs, but I hope everybody's being safe or as safe as possible. We are here in Nashville, or at least we are here in Nashville. It's a little crazy once you get outdoors, but I'm looking forward to going to see live music again really soon. There's so much of it down here. Before I get into my interview with Brandon Seabrook, I want to mention my sponsors, Red Panda and Earthquaker Devices. Please go to the website. You can go directly to their websites, but if you go to my website, guitarmoderne.com, and click through to their website, it helps me. And you won't be disappointed in all the amazing and interesting effects you'll find on both sites. They are essentials in the arsenal of any modern guitar player these days. I've been wanting to talk to Brandon Seabrook for a long time. He's one of the top modern guitarists in New York City, which makes him one of the top modern guitarists anywhere. He's got amazing technique, which he puts in the service of a style that incorporates jazz, rock, punk, avant-garde, free improvisation, and many more. He also plays a lot of banjo, which I needed to ask him about as well. And we get off on some really interesting tangents, so I really hope you enjoy the interview. Please check it out and enjoy it. Thank you. So yeah, the last time, well, I met you briefly outside that gig you did with Mike Baguetta. Not, you and he were on the same bill at some
Oh
time bar in
yeah.
Brooklyn. He
Oh,
was,
at yeah, I know. He was playing with Nels and
yeah, Nels on lap steel.
that's right. That was oh my God, was it anyway, whatever. I
And were you with Gerald Beasley, I think?
Joe Cleaver
Cleaver, Gerald Cleaver.
and
Yeah.
Brandon Lopez was on that gig, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. That's a great little space. I mean, it sounds
Yeah.
terrific in there. And I think that's the last time I was in New York and the
Is that
last,
2019?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
That was
I'm not sure what month it was, but I mean, after that, obviously we hit 2020 and
yeah. Yeah, I think that was late 2019.
hit the fan. Yeah, I remember it being cold. So let's go to the beginning. How did you get started on guitar?
Oh my God. Uh Well, I think it was primarily a visual thing. I saw MTV and I saw the music videos, and I thought that looked like a lot of fun. And so I got a guitar, and my parents were really supportive with lessons, and they saw that I had an interest in it. So yeah, it just started from there. But it wasn't until I found on my PV Audition 20 had a little PV Audition 20 amp, and on PVs that's the blue knob that you pull out gives you distortion. So I was kind of practicing along and playing, and something just didn't sound right to me. I'm listening to records and then I'm playing on my amp, and then I was in the music store one day and the guy was demonstrating how you pull the knob out to get distortion. And that was it. That was the moment everything really turned. And I ran home or drove home or ran up to my room and just pulled the blue knob out. And that's when it really took off. Then I could play along with records, and I started to, just felt so much better having a distortion.
So did you start to take lessons at some point or
Yeah,
study?
yeah. Started, maybe 9 or 10, taking lessons with a great guitarist in Boston, John Finn, teaches at Berkeley. He's taught there for 30 years. He was my first teacher. He's sort of like a fusion rock guitar player, and he was my first teacher. Yeah, and he got me really, really into it, and I just took it from there. So I took lessons for 3 years, then I stopped, and then I just kind of taught myself a lot of things through high school, and then started taking lessons again at the end of high school because I wanted to get into jazz and I needed a little bit of help with chord changes, and I was still locked into the pentatonic box and stuff through high school. And so yeah, that's it.
Where did you grow up?
I grew up in Foxborough, Massachusetts, suburb south of Boston, probably 40 minutes south of Boston. It had a great music program. Our high school, Foxborough High School, had a great music program where I found solace in the jazz band, the jazz program. Stephen Massey was the director. He's sort of a legend in the town, a pedagogical legend. And I learned a lot about jazz. The big band was quite good at the school, a really good program. And we played a lot of concerts, and we had a large book. The repertoire in this high school jazz band's book was huge. Ellington, Bob Mintzer, Stan Kenton, a lot of repertoires. We were playing a lot of music. A lot of those high school bands in that area would like learn 3 songs the whole year to go play at competitions and like win gold medals. But we would do that and be successful, but we'd also play tons of music. So Count Basie. So I got into that and really got into jazz through that.
So you
and,
were
that was a big, yeah.
I was saying you were playing everything from Freddie Green,
Freddie Green style,
more complex chords from the Bob Mintzer stuff.
And the rhythms were the hardest thing in Bob Mintzer, like reading 16th note rhythms. And I faked it a lot. I would look at the bass player's hands and I would just hear the part and be able to figure it out and play it back. So I developed my ears actually pretty well in that period by having to do that, not being able to, my reading wasn't together yet. So I would use my ears and eyes to catch up, because the stuff is complex for high school kids to play.
Some of that's complex for anybody.
To play, and to get the styles. Here's a Freddie Green thing, and then here's a little bit more, a Bob Mintzer thing, and then a ballad. Playing jazz guitar on a ballad, and so those were really formidable experiences.
Did you go to college for
music? I did. I went to New England Conservatory in Boston, and that was also by that point I was still into jazz, but my other influences like punk rock and metal and hard rock and those things from the past were starting to all come together to sort of seep in to my playing. They were all coming in and in and in. By the time I got to NEC, they all started to be more a part of my expression than just before that. It was like jazz, rock, blues. So anyway,
right.
Yeah.
But you have put it together in a really inimitable style.
Thanks.
It's and when did you get into the more experimental stuff, like making noises?
Well, I think that
and stuff.
Yeah, I think that it all comes in a line from you get a record and you read the back and you see all the names on there. I think I got Freak Out, Frank Zappa, middle high school, and in there he names like 40 or 50 influential figures to him. Eric Dolphy, Varese, Stockhausen, all these people. So I would be looking on there and I said, "Oh, who is this?" Or Eddie Van Halen talking. The only guitar player he talked about in any of his interviews was Alan Holdsworth. So I'm like, "Oh, who is this?" And so I would just start listening to that stuff. You eat. You're hungry for it. What is this? You're reading magazines. So, or the back of a Led Zeppelin album, controversial. Stealing these songs from Muddy Waters and Sonny Boy Williamson, and you go down that road and you find all these things, and then from Alan Holdsworth you get into to what Soft Machine, where you get into like the English thing, where you get into Henry Cow, where you get into Fred Frith, where you get into Derek Bailey, and so it's just going these things, and I just I loved like hearing Derek Bailey play. I loved it, and I would try to take the things that I liked about it and add it in. I guess I was conscious about I didn't want to take it all on and be too much of any of those people, but I would take little things that I really liked and expand on those.
Sure. Well, that's the secret to developing your own style is steal
Yeah,
a lot of people,
steel.
not one or two people. And
Yeah,
it's
yeah, steel.
hot, but well,
Yeah.
you lived in New York for quite a while. Do you think living in New York and being on that scene encouraged
Oh
that
yeah.
aspect of
Yeah. Yeah, sure. I mean, yeah, being in New York, I play as a musician, just like making a living, I would play uh, many styles. I got into klezmer, Eastern European music, and I was getting a lot of gigs doing that on banjo. And I was, getting paid and going on tour. And then I would play, wedding gigs, and I would play in a Broadway pit. And then I would play, you know, uh, DIY punk rock shows, and I would play, straight ahead jazz sessions, and I would get hired by folk rock people to play on their records. And so I guess I always had that coming from sort of a working class background. I was always just working. I was just doing anything. I would just love that. I know some musicians don't like to say like, "Oh, I'm working." It's like, no, I'm creating. I'm being creative. But for me, it was, yeah, I really took advantage of New York in that way. And again, those styles were, my banjo and guitar playing were completely separated when I got to New York. And I was doing more banjo playing when I first got here because guitar. But then as I lived here, and the two things, like my sense of like my approach to music, things were separate. But then living in New York really brought the guitar and banjo to be, there's no, I don't approach them differently anymore. I'm as confident in both of them. And so, but anyway, yeah, I did. Living in New York really inspired me to get my thing together faster as a sort of survival thing. If you can be valuable in many different ways, uh, you can, do okay, spiritually and economically, or you can get by. At least I spend a lot of time just getting by on music and things. But yeah, it's a challenge in New York, and it's you know competitive in a really uh, inspiring way.
Oh yeah. Well, yeah, I lived there
Oh, you live there? Oh
20
yeah, yeah.
years. Oh
Oh,
yeah.
nice. And so what were you doing? You were playing, you were.
Well, yeah, I mean, I lived, I grew up there, grew up around there, and I started playing in New York many, many, many years ago, and that's the New York thing. I mean, for better or for worse,
Yeah,
New York is expensive. It's always, I mean, it wasn't as expensive when I was living there in the 70s, but it was still relatively expensive. And if you wanted to work, you had to play everything. And everybody in New York played everything. The
yeah,
difficulty was, finding it made it a little more difficult to find your own sound for
right.
people because you couldn't concentrate on that. But Bill Frisell did wedding gigs when he lived there, because
Sure, sure, sure.
it was that or clean houses, which he also did
Wow.
when he lived there. So that was the deal, always the deal. You played whatever you could. So it's not surprising. But you brought up the big elephant in the room, which is why banjo. I
Oh,
mean,
why banjo? Yeah,
how
well,
did you get into banjo,
yeah.
and why, and
I had a teacher in college, Hankus Netsky, who was responsible for the klezmer revival, one of the main people responsible in the late 70s and the early 80s in the West Coast and the East Coast. These bands were discovering their great grandparents' music, which was for decades not talked about. So Hankus, anyway, when the klezmer bands were in the 20s, like the music they were reviving and asking their grandparents about, when the musicians came from Eastern Europe, they mimicked the hot jazz groups of the time, which had tenor banjo and tuba, and sometimes they lacked drums. So the banjo, like those early jazz groups, was the drum. Anyway, so it was him who, I was taking one of his classes, and he said, "Hey, Brandon, have you ever played tenor banjo? We use that a lot in my band and in music and in this music." So I was like, "This sounds good." I went to the music library, the music instrument library at NEC, and checked out a tenor banjo. And I took some lessons with Bob Sullivan, who was a great teacher there. And I just started playing it in Hankis's ensemble at school. And then the students in that ensemble started a band, and we were starting to get gigs. And then eventually I brought the tenor banjo into my other experimental projects and rock projects and jazz, and I loved it. I loved the fact that it's completely opposite. There's no sustain on the tenor banjo at all. There's no, very little, hardly any, especially when you're fretting notes. So I love the tremolo. In order to get that sustain, you do the tremolo picking. And so I don't know, it just felt good to me. I love doing it. I love the physical sensation of it. I love the sound. I love so yeah, so I just fell in love with the banjo and wanted to bring it in to my own thing, and spent a lot of years around the late 90s, early 2000s really just focusing on tenor banjo, which I'd never thought I would. And then it influenced my guitar playing, and my guitar playing influenced the tenor banjo. Another cool thing about the tenor banjo is, there's like a couple ways to play F major 7. There's not 75 ways like there is on the guitar. So it's a good ear training tool also, because you're really hearing your way through chords and progressions, and the way chords are stacked, and so that was cool to strip it down. It just felt stripped down to me.
Well, it's a completely different tuning as well.
It's a tuning, yeah. It's in fifths.
It's 4/5, right?
Yeah,
yeah.
So it's sort of another language in a way in terms of layout.
So did you do any trad jazz stuff?
Yeah, actually, yeah, I still do it sometimes. Yeah, I did trad jazz stuff in Boston. There were some bands there. I would do it, and played trad jazz brunch gigs and trad jazz concerts, jam sessions. Yeah, and I still do that. I played in New York. I've played on a dozen or so kind of trad jazz albums over the years, and it's great fun. That style is Harry Reiser. He was the tenor banjo king in the 30s and 40s, and he was incredible.
It's amazing right hand.
It's amazing
right hand thing, because I played in a hot club of San Francisco.
Oh, nice.
And
were you playing tenor banjo?
No. I played guitar, but the lead guitar player, Paul Mailing, the leader of the band, he played tenor banjo in a lot of trad stuff, and so he had that thing, where words where you can tremolo them up the neck, and
yeah. What a crazy sound.
Yeah, and so he applied it to the Django stuff and to the Django type chords.
Yeah.
So you keep it? Do you keep it? You stick with 4 strings and standard tenor?
I stick with CGDA. You really kind of get the. I mean, you could tune it. I mean, the Irish players tune it lower, than the Irish tenor banjo players have a different tuning that's not as tight. I mean, yeah, you could play it in other tunings, but I wanted to learn it in the tuning as a challenge. I wanted to have it. I didn't want to pick it up and have it be the top 4 of a guitar, which I still can't do on like ukulele. I don't get that. Like top 4 of a guitar. What is this?
Tommy Tedesco thing,
yeah.
Play a million ethnic instruments, just tune them all like a band.
Oh, I mean, he was amazing. I'm sure he played tenor banjo on those Beach Boy records, probably.
But he probably tuned it like the top or bottom 4.
Probably tuned it like the top or bottom.
And also, in Nashville, the big thing is ganjo,
right?
Basically a 6-string guitar banjo, 6-string banjo, which
was used in the hot club and in Louis Armstrong's band. I'm pretty sure the banjo player played a 6-string banjo. They were popular at the time because the tenor banjo for a minute in the 20s was bigger than the guitar, if you can imagine it. So if you wanted to get that banjo sound and you didn't have time to learn it, they were making, Gibson and Vega and Bacon and Day, they all made 6-string tenor banjos, which sound really cool. Often people are like, oh, well, that's cheating or whatever. But it sounds cool. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that, what is his name? One of Louis' banjo players played a 6-string banjo on those records. Maybe some further research is needed, but
well, if it's a 6-string banjo, what would make it a tenor banjo in that case? Isn't that just like a?
No, it's just it's not a tenor. It's just a guitar banjo, but they date back. They've been around as long as, or not quite as long, but as long as at least the 20s. Yeah, it's just a guitar tuned. Maybe it's tuned an octave up from a regular guitar.
I mean, the ones in Nashville aren't, but
All
maybe
right, yeah.
they were. Yeah, I mean, it was basically because no one could hear a guitar,
Yeah.
with other instruments. And I guess once you could electrify a guitar, that was the death of the banjo. The tenor banjo, does it have a back on it?
It does. Mine doesn't. I took the back off, but it does have a resonator on it usually. And I didn't think much of it, but I played, some other banjo players were like, I've never seen a open back tenor, but it's just lighter, easier to, I like the sound of it.
Different sound. I mean, I'm not a big fan of bluegrass banjo, but I like old time country banjo.
Yeah.
When they're frailing, and that's all open back banjo. And
Yeah.
sound,
Yeah.
it's more African, less plinky.
Yeah, I like it. I mean, one time I was playing in a show, a Broadway show or something, and I needed the resonator because it wasn't loud enough. It wasn't cracking loud enough for the conductor, it was just insane to me. But I just put it on, and it really works. It really amplifies it. But yeah, I like to, when I do play the tenor in my own music, I sort of approach it more. Not as block chord playing as early jazz or jazz, more single notes or different clusters, and you can get some pretty cool voicings on there for some chords,
Sure.
especially using the open strings a lot, and you can do a pretty good reasonable facsimile of a 5-string type of sound, because sometimes people hire, or I'll get a gig for something and they just think banjo. And I tell them it's a tenor, and then they want me to play sort of bluegrass type line. So I just, fake it with a pick and use a lot of open strings, and, use it. I've developed some techniques or some riffs or approaches that I can get bluegrassy in country.
Interval.
Yeah. That's it. The minor second slide. I do tell people, like, it would be great if this was in D or G or A. If you want that.
There's no capo
there is, but you lose the resonance. It just mutes the whole thing. I actually, one time I was playing with a singer-songwriter, and this tune was in D flat, and it was killing me. And I was like, can you just move the capo up? Can we do this in D? And he's like, sure. And the whole thing, opens up. So I always ask.
Right. So when you play
Anyway.
live, do you ever amplify it? And if so,
yeah, I have a really nice pickup from Schertler. I think they're in Sweden.
Yeah,
they make a great. I've had pickups in the past. They're too bright. And I was on tour once with this cellist, and we had she needed an amp, and we all had picked the amps, and there was this shitty like Marshall combo, and she's like, "Well, I guess I'll use that." She plugged into it, and it sounded incredible. And I was like, "What is that?" She's like, "It's a Schertler pickup." So I got one. It's really dark. It's nice, full sound. So I just do that, and I use a delay pedal, but I'm not really into banjo with effects, but I use an analog delay pedal with it sometimes just to give it, on the tremolo stuff, to open it up, give it some reverb, or I might use amp reverb a little bit, just at times. But yeah, it has
effect.
Yeah, it is. It's a special effect, so you don't need much. They don't need much.
So getting back to the guitar, what is the story with that guitar that you use all the time?
Well, it's a Fender. What is it? Heavy metal telly from the late 80s, Japan. They made this thing. You can find them online, and I bought it from my friend and college's dad, who had sort of modded it out, and it was kind of a mess, but I've just played it ever since. It's just been my guitar.
Doesn't it have an acoustic bridge on it though?
It does. Yeah, hold on. I just happen to have it here. I just happen to have it out, but I did. Yeah, it has this bridge, but it has this piezo bridge, which it comes with when you buy it, but it doesn't. I took it out. I don't use it. It's too great. It's too bright. And then, I just wore a hole through it. This is like hard work.
So is that an actual hole, or is that?
That's a hole. That's a hole that that I just wore right through playing it.
Seeing the back of the guitar.
What's that?
We're seeing right through to the back.
Yeah, you're seeing right through to the back. I never knew this was hollow here. I didn't know that this was hollow, it's a hollow chamber here. But yeah, I don't know. It's just been my guitar. I put some new pickups in it recently, and
how do you have it wired? Because you have a lot of switches. And
yeah, I just got it wired to be, you know, humbucker and P90, P90 only, and then all of them in series. And then I have this switch here. If you put it up, it's this pickup out of phase. So I've never done this. Like, so if this is in the middle and you have it here, it's this pickup these pickups out of phase, and it gets you a really, they call it the Peter Green sound, but it's super bright, like a transistor radio, which is cool.
well, the Peter Green sound, I mean, people get confused about that.
Yeah, what is that? Tell me what it is.
Well, it is out of phase, but the thing is, if you have on a Gibson or any two pickup guitar where each has its own volume, if it's out of phase, but it's only out of phase if both pickups are, I mean, that plinky sound, real plinky sound, if both pickups are equal volume.
Okay.
Change the volume of one of them a little bit, you can get a wide range of really cool out of phase sounds.
Yeah.
Will be a lot less plinky and transistor radio-y sounding, which is a great sound also. I mean, that's for certain things, but you can have that, or you can have all sorts of ranges if you lower the bridge pickup. Or
Right. I need to do that. Yeah. Now that's now was that, did he have that done, or was that just on that guitar, that greeny, right? That Kirk
yeah, I
Hammett
don't know the whole story. I know, I mean, I've read stuff. I don't remember. He has one of the pickups is backwards. Also
backwards, right.
mounted backwards. I'm not sure. You know, the pole pieces are in a different place, and the screws are in a different place than usual. I don't know how much that affects it.
Right.
Bass thing, I don't know. I mean, on Gibsons, a lot of those old arch tops, those big arch tops with multiple P90s,
Yeah.
those are out of phase. They just came out of the factory out of phase. And
Right.
that's why you hear that on early BB King records.
That was a choice they made to put them out of phase. It just,
I'm not even sure whether it was a choice or they had no idea.
Right. It's just
that they just built them. And because I mean, I'm not even
the early days of electric guitar. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. They just built them and wired them up and didn't really know what they were doing. And maybe some were and some weren't. But I know that a lot of them, it is out of phase, and it's a cool sound. And it's not to be confused with what people call the Stratocaster out of phase sound.
And what is that? That's
it's not electronic. It's physical. You know, it's
right.
Thing. The way the two pickups pick up the phase relationship of the string is what gives it that sound. But they're electronically, they're in phase. You know, they're not out of phase.
Right.
Yeah, a lot of that kind of lore going around.
I love that. Yeah. Oh, I mean, that guitar that Gary Moore owned, that greeny guitar, and then Kirk Hammett bought it for some like $25 million. I don't know what.
Yeah.
And he has it, and he's like, it's crazy. I bet that's
and he still won't be able to play like Peter Green, but
that's right. Well, he could try, but
he plays great. But Gary Moore does a really credible Peter Green imitation. I think
Gary Moore was incredible. Yeah, he owned that guitar. He bought that from Peter Green, or Peter Green.
I don't know if he gave it to him or he
gave it to him. He had it for years, right? Years.
Yeah,
and then
he did a whole record with it as a tribute, and he could nail that Peter Green feel and tone and sound. He was great at it.
That's a great guitar. Yeah,
he was one of the, I mean, Peter was one of the best.
Yeah.
So I know when I saw you in New York, you were using one of those ZT lunchbox.
Oh yeah, I got one right here.
Are you still using that? I mean, it's
well, you know, I just actually got some of my amps repaired, and I bought a new amp, and I got this amp repaired. I've got a Magnetone, high fidelity 1962 Magnetone, which is incredible. the tremolo and reverb on that I'm not a Fender fan. I don't really like Fenders. I mean, they're incredibly iconic and cool, but for my guitar and my thing, I like more of, I just don't like that amp. But those types of amps. But I have a Magnetone, and I just bought a 1973 Trainer YM3, which I've always liked Trainers. I love that mid range that has, and it just has a few knobs, and they're really durable. And I don't know, I just love that sound.
One of the best kept secrets
It really is, and they're not. You can buy them. You know, you can buy those YB3 like bass heads that a lot of guitar players use, $500, and they sound incredible. And yeah, anyway, so those are ZT Lunchbox for New York. It's incredible. It's like, you know, you can't beat it. I mean, in a way, for its portability, and it sounds good. But I've actually recorded albums with this thing. Just put it through a Marshall cab or A/B it with another amp to get, because I do like solid state. I do like the sound of solid state amps. But you know, it's great, but I'm glad to be getting these other amps in the mix a little bit more.
Sure. When you do fly dates, what do you ask for?
I always ask for like PV solid state amps, just throw it on there, or I ask for Polytone. I mean, I don't know. I ask for Polytone, which is solid state, or I'll ask for Trainer, and I'll ask for stuff. But usually get a Fender.
So you still get a Fender hot rod.
You get a Fender. Oh, I hate those. They're cool, so I hate those. Hopefully, I'll get a deluxe reverb, like a reissue deluxe reverb. Those are cool. Like a reissue deluxe is great, or a reissue super reverb, which I like. I think super reverb is my favorite Fender amp. Somehow I get along with that one the best. But yeah, I usually get like a. But then if you get there and you ask what else they have, they might have some weird solid state or something like a Trainer that they didn't think you would want. And I'm like, oh, I'll take that. But it's usually like, yeah, Fender, whatever, you know. I've learned how to use those. I've learned how to make it not about the amp at all anymore. You know, I try to get everything going before the amp. The amp doesn't have much influence, I hope, in my sound.
Do you have any kind of pedal that helps with that?
I do. I have an overdrive pedal that I take with me from Fairfield Circuitry.
Oh yeah.
They have this overdrive pedal called the Barbershop, which is nice. And then I also use John Blackstone Appliances. He's in New York, and that's a nice pedal too to have going to help out.
Little one about.
Yeah, and it has 2 channels in it, and it's a great pedal. So those help. Those can help.
Yeah. I was watching a video of you where you're running a tape recorder through the bridge pickup, one of your solos.
Yeah.
Recently. Is that bridge pickup particularly microphonic because it picks it
No,
up?
it goes through all the pickups. All of them are equally microphonic. That one's just the brightest one for me, so it sort of cuts. But the neck pickup works too. And yeah, I stole that off of a great guitarist in Boston named Pete Fitzpatrick. He was in the band Clem Snide for a while, and he was really creative guy. And I was younger and impressionable, and in that phase where I'm like, wow, why can't I mix all the things I love into one thing, where he was kind of doing that. He'd have a tape recorder and he bows his tenor banjo. I stole that from him. I stole the tape recorder. I stole his overt rock influences into a jazz setting. He sort of saw him doing that. He was a big inspiration. So yeah, the tape recorder thing, I just saw him do it. And
is he still playing?
I think so. I don't know. I think he's still doing stuff. He lives maybe in California now. Look him up. Yeah, Pete Fitzpatrick. Forgot the name of his solo project that he would sing and play guitar on. He was in a great Boston band called Naftali's Dream. It was a klezmer fusion band. They had some records on John Zorn's label. I played with them actually in my last few years in Boston. I got to play in the band for a few years, and he was in that band. So my interest in klezmer music led me to that band, and then I saw them doing this wild, mix of klezmer and rock and noise and improvisation, and I had that idea in my head. I just didn't know how to do it. So seeing Pete doing it was like, oh.
What's on that tape that you're playing?
There are tapes that I make myself with my cassette 4-track. I'll just make loops and tapes and raw sound and noise. I make all the tapes myself. So it's just two sides. It's very much like a Cage Chance piece every time. I don't have any loops. I don't have anything set up. I just put it on and make it work with manipulating the volume knob and bringing it off and on wherever it's at. It's total chance. After using one tape for like 2 years, you kind of get to know what's on there a little bit, but it's still total chance. And it usually works.
I imagine after 2 years, it sounds a little different too.
Yeah, it does. It does. Yeah.
It's a really cool lo-fi sound.
Really cool lo-fi sound. Yeah. And so that's part of it's like a very portable electronics kit.
On that Streamfest video, I think it's called TV.
Yeah, I didn't see that. I didn't see that.
It sounds like you're using a hold function on a reverb pedal or something.
Yeah, I got a reverb by the last record that I put out, the engineer and he had gotten this new Shimmer reverb plugin, and I love that Holdsworth Shimmer reverb, and I was too afraid to try to use it. But I was doing a recording session that David Torn was engineering and kind of producing, and he had this little reverb pedal on the console, and he was using all the playback in the room. He was using this pedal for the reverb, and I was like, and it sounded, and I'm like, what is that? I'd never seen anybody use a guitar pedal as outboard gear, and it was a Neuneighbor. I can't, from California. It's their Expanse Reverb pedal. So I've been really getting into that pedal.
Is there a hold function on it?
I set it long. I just set it to be very long. It's a Shimmer reverb on a long.
But it seemed like you were playing over it without your guitar being affected. Or is it still?
Yeah, well, when you shut it off, was it going for a long time?
Oh, so when you shut it off, you can have the trail off.
The trail goes for like 5 or 6 seconds.
Okay, so yeah, so for all intents and purposes, you're playing over
a little loop or something. Yeah,
like a looper. Oh, that's great, because it sounds so good. It sounds.
It could have also been going through my delay that kept it going longer.
Okay.
Could have also been, but I think that's got to be it, because I don't have a hold pedal. I don't have many pedals. I don't use that many. Just distortion or reverb and delay.
So
I love pedals, but anyway.
Let's talk about 3 Layer Cake.
Oh yeah,
it's an amazing record.
Thanks.
Sound is terrific. So you guys did it remotely? How did you record it?
Yeah, well, Mike Pride and Mike Watt, they started them. Mike Pride did a bunch of drum tracks, sent them to Mike Watt, and then they sent them to me. And then I just listened and tried to find a way in, and it was really fun because I had a lot of time to do it and to experiment. And it took me a minute, making sense of the tracks, because they were sort of free form and had some form to them. And yeah, I just started putting riffs and ideas down and sending them back to those guys. And then they'd, send me back an idea. Well, what about this part there, and move this part over here? And we just started to assemble these songs. And then I would write some melodies, and then Mike Pride would play them on marimba. And yeah, so it was really fun. We did it over a couple of months. Is that a good answer? It was just pretty organic. Pretty organic.
That's the basic thing. but it's not even so much that it sounds cohesive. I mean, that like you're playing in the same room, although it does
Yeah,
sound like you could be.
yeah,
It sounds more like it to me is that it's constructed, that it's really constructed. It
yeah,
doesn't sound like a live session. It sounds like a record, like you were
yeah,
painting a picture all together. And because there's multiple overdubs, everybody seems to be doing multiple overdubs,
yeah,
and it lists sort of stuff, but there's all sorts of sounds on there besides, like you telling Mike's playing marimba. Um,
yeah.
the bowing, you mentioned bowing the tenor banjo. There's a lot of bowing on
A
there.
lot of bowing. Yeah, yeah. I love that sound. I wanted to make. I feel like if you in a set or a record, if you bow on one song, it's like it's kind of like, oh, a gimmick. But if you do it more, if you do the tape recorder on like 3 pieces or the bow on two, it's like a thing.
Right.
So I just, yeah, actually listening back to the record, I hadn't listened to it in months, and I got a copy of it, and I was like, wow, there's a lot of bowing on here. I just, yeah, I just wanted to really lean into it. I love records. I've always loved records and overdubs, and I always loved the studio. And on my own albums, I always utilize the studio, whether it's a lot of overdubs or editing. Or so to me, that's my favorite thing about making records. So I really took this chance and this time to get into that. And I think, yeah, the bowing on the first song, I think there's maybe like 2 or 3 tracks of bowing happening. There's a lot of overdubs. We really got into it. And Mike Pride did a great job mixing it. He mixed it. I mean, he worked on it a lot. And Mike Watt had a lot of really good ideas of suggestions about how the bass and drums sit together. He had a lot of EQ. He's really an expert with that he had a lot of good suggestions. So, it was a group effort in that way. So it was fun. Yeah, I didn't know what it was going to be when I heard the tracks. I could have gone a number of ways. I could have just improvised and we could have just jammed more, but I don't really do that. I guess I like to build up structures and use the studio and layering, and yeah.
Well, yeah, I can tell you like to build up structures, because even if that free solo improv stuff with the tape recorder, there's always a sense of structure to the song
Yeah,
you're taking. I mean, as many directions as you go, they really feel composed in the moment. So were you bowing tenor banjo? Is that all banjo?
yeah, it's all banjo bowing. Yeah, it doesn't go. I don't do it on guitar really as much. Sometimes maybe I'll do it on guitar next time, but yeah, it's all tenor banjo bowing. It's all yeah, it's such a cool sound.
Now you
And
have
it's kind of like you don't know what it is. It's like it's not a violin, it's not a guitar,
no.
it's not uh yeah. Yeah, I have a solo album from 2013 where I bow. There's a lot of banjo bowing on. Yeah, just love the sound. I just
So you have to bow back on the neck, before it meets the body, because I would think that body would get in the way.
No, you can bow it right over the body. I mean, you can either do the top string by itself, the high A with a little bit of the open D, or the low C, or all the strings together. And you can do sort of like a low high thing, but you can't like bow the D string. You can't get to it. You just get the outer strings or all the strings together.
Yeah, it's pretty much that way on guitar.
Yeah.
What rosin do you use?
Oh God, whatever. I used bass rosin for a while because it's really sticky. And I use cheap bows. I mean, if a bow lasts me like a year or so, it's fine. I at one point I had some string player friends were like giving me their extra kind of fancy bows that they didn't use, and those wouldn't last at all. Those would just blow up. Those would just explode.
Oh, really? The cheaper ones last
Yeah,
better?
they last a little longer. Like a cheaper carbon fiber one will last you. The hairs get wrecked, but it just, yeah, you're not really you don't really need anything it's going to get you a tone or ever. You don't. It's not like it has anything to do with the sound. It's just it's pretty vulgar. It's pretty pretty gnarly. It's not a pretty thing.
Did you mic up? You mic the banjo or use the
Yeah, when I record it, I usually only just mic it. Sometimes I'll play with an amp if I'm going to use pedals and effects, but this time I just was acoustic. And we put reverb on it later, a little bit, not much. We put the effects on later, but yeah, I don't like the gimmick of like banjo with effects or like tuba with effects, or I don't know. It's just never really did it for me. So I like to keep it as pure as possible.
What drive were you using on Big Burner? Do you remember?
What drive? Yeah, that was the Fairfield Circuitry barber shop overdrive. Yeah, plug them. They're amazing up in Canada. That was the Fairfield Circuitry barber shop overdrive through the Lunchbox, which is funny. But most of the records on Lunchbox, most of the guitar stuff, because I didn't have my other amp, I didn't have my Magnetone repaired at that point, or my other amp, so I was relying on the Lunchbox, or in some tracks I went direct, which I was cool.
Yeah.
Like the last track on the record that has that sort of that 60s fuzz tone, kind of. It's the last track, which is called Shepherds, has a really gnarly. That's direct. That's all direct guitar.
But you ran your fuzz tone, or you just
no. I just went through my distortion pedal in direct, and with the neck pickup on, and it was just really gnarly.
On the other end of the spectrum is that there's like a flute-like drive on Durable Quest.
Yeah.
How did you
that's volume swells. That's volume knob swells.
But it's a really dark sound.
Yeah, I like my sound. I like my sound could be dark. I think that's also the Fairfield Circuitry through the Lunchbox. I think maybe it's a little bit less overdriven. But that's the only two distortion pedals I used were the Fairfield Circuitry, and then I used the XL drive, the that small one, the exotic.
Oh yeah.
It's supposed to be like a Marshall Plexi, and you know which one I mean.
I know. I know there are Seed and
XL drive. Yeah, that's what it's called.
Okay.
Those were the only two distortion pedals I used, and it could have been on a Durable Quest 2, just at a less. Maybe the drive was turned down.
Just really fat and dark and flute-like, very bass flute. It sounds more like somebody playing bass flute.
Yeah, I think it was the humbucker neck pickup with Fairfield Circuitry and the Lunchbox. I mean, as we all know, small amps are the best to record with. If you don't have space. Jimmy Page did that Supro on the whole Led Zeppelin 1, right? Sounds, which I listened to the other day for the first time in like 10 years, and I think that's his best record as a guitarist. I mean, he is like, the sounds on, listen to it again, the sound of the guitar in that is like,
you have to convince me.
I forget, it sounds insane. And he's really playing well. And anyway, that's whatever. We don't need to talk about him, but I just small amps or night. Yeah, in the studio, if I'm in a studio, I'll always take the smallest amp I can get. Speaker.
You get a great sound out of it. On that song Tiller,
yeah,
who wrote out whose part between you and Mike on the marimba?
Nobody. I started that song myself, and that, I believe, is the guitars are direct, because I wanted to get the bell-like harmonics, the fake harmonics, Yeah. So I overdubbed those chords myself. I started that one. That's the only one I started. Yeah, so the idea is we'd send these tracks and we wouldn't tell the other person really what to do, unless once we started hearing stuff back, then we could suggest little things like, this part works here, but maybe hold it back here, or can you do more of this? Like a little bit, but I just sent those guys that track. And my only thing was in between those guitar chords, this tape recorder stuff that's like in the middle, like the sound scape is my tape recorder. And so I wanted them to sort of come in on that part and to leave the guitar things alone. But as it progressed, the two would start to clash and they would come in sooner. And so yeah, that's direct guitar harmonics. Yeah.
If I'm not mistaken, there's a solo on there that sounds like it's doubled by marimba.
Oh, Tiller. Oh, I'm sorry. That's the wrong song.
Okay.
Oh my God, that's the wrong song. Wait a minute. That's the wrong song. That is which one were you talking about?
Well, I for the flute-like sound, I was talking about durable
Yeah,
click.
that's it. And then what's the other one?
Killer is the one where it sounds like there's a solo doubled by guitar and marimba. And we both it's a fairly complex kind of solo sound. So, I mean, solo playing, but you guys are playing it together.
Hold on a second. Is it? Oh, I think that has that's banjo.
Are you doubling the guitar with the banjo?
There's no guitar on Tiller.
Well, there's one where I'm pretty sure there's two people playing a solo where it's double.
Because it's a written out melody. Yeah. No, that's two banjos and marimba.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure there's no guitar on that. That's the fourth song, the fifth song?
I don't know. I'd have to look. Oop, if I can get it up here.
Is it this?
Yeah, it's the fourth. One, two, three, fifth song.
This one? Can you hear that?
No.
Oh yeah, it's the fifth song. Yeah, that's banjo.
Okay.
In marimba. I wrote that melody and then I double tracked the banjo and in octaves, and Mike played the marimba melody. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, because I mean, I hear things like that often, where people are doubling what sounds more like a solo. I mean, it's fairly complex melody.
Yeah, I guess you might not think, to some people that's a melody, to other people that's like a soli or something. Yeah.
But somebody, always one person has to play it and the other person has to, read it or transcribe it.
Yeah. I wrote that and played it, and then I sent Mike a chart of it, and he did a great job. He did that really well, and he takes a great marimba solo on that song towards the end. Yeah. It's kind of a marimba piece, and there's bowing banjo on that later in the piece. The banjo bows, but I'm sorry, I was talking about. I was talking about the song with the harmonics, Shepherds. I was talking the fourth song with the guitar, the harmonics. That's all direct guitar. Sorry.
Well, no problem. I mean, that's good, because I wasn't going to ask about that, but it's great.
Oh yeah, it's
describe that, and now the people will know which tune it is. And
yeah,
I mean, talking about this stuff is all a shameless ploy to get people to buy the record.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah.
So they get that. Oh wait, he did this on. Well, I got to listen to that tune. So then they'll get which they did anyway, because it probably will be on my 10 best list.
Wow. Well, I'm glad you like it.
Yeah, I think it's not like anything else.
Oh, that's good to hear.
And sonically, it's spectacular. I mean, he did a great job of mixing.
Mike did a great job. We heard it so much and doing it and I haven't really listened to it, so I don't know what it is. When you do a recording, you're not sure what it is. So I'm glad it came off like that to you. That's good.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's just the way he spatialized it and where
he did a great job.
It's really it's a listening experience, as a sonic listening experience over and above the music, which is
good. That's great. Well, thanks. Yeah.
So how did the another unclassifiable record, the Almag Sharvet, is that how you pronounce his name?
Oh yeah.
How did that Get Up and Cry record?
Oh, that's a record, Almag. Yeah, he put that together over a few years, and the songs are great. It's complex stuff. He has many different styles that he goes in and out of, which is really impressive. And we recorded that all together before quarantine, I think in December of 2019. And that was challenging. I used Lunchbox on that session. This is like a Lunchbox ad. I need a couple Lunchbox. I need a couple new ones because the plug on this is starting to go and nobody really wants to fix it. Anyway,
Well, they have a new one. I'll try and hook you up because they have
yeah,
a new one that has reverb in it. That has
I saw that. I
and
saw that. Yeah, they don't make this one anymore. This is the old one. This is I
uh,
think I this is the original.
yeah, well, they keep changing them. Like I have two of them, and they sound very different. Each one of its them
How
sound.
does the how does the one with reverb sound?
They haven't sent me that one yet.
Oh, okay, okay.
I hope it's because they're doing real well and selling them. But
They probably are. I hope
I'll try to
so.
hook you up because you've certainly done plenty of plugging for it.
Yeah, this whole lunchbox, this whole, oh my God, you take your 3-layer cake in your lunchbox to the gig because it's the only amp I use on the thing. They can hear it in different, there's a lot of, yeah, it's all lunchbox. I don't think that's it. That's the only amp.
Yeah. Well, so did you play banjo on? You played on Deer Hunter was one of the tracks on that. It sounds like you played banjo, but then
I
you
did.
did you overdub that
I
kind of
overdubbed that. Yeah, I overdubbed that.
Barry from Hell solo?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah, I overdubbed that.
That's a great solo. I mean,
Oh, thanks. I didn't like my solo on that, but thanks.
it starts off like it starts off kind of like Chuck Berry rock and roll, and then
Yeah, I love just, yeah.
goes off, which is very cool. So, how have you been faring during the lockdown? What
Yeah,
have you been doing?
I've been, teaching a bit. I've been doing, took part in some recording sessions and some streaming gigs. And I just made a video recording of one of my trios with Cooper Moore on diddley bow and Gerald Cleaver on drums. We have an album that came out last year during the pandemic. So we just did a video shoot and came out really well of us playing in the studio. So I'm going to be putting that out soon. And yeah, it's been challenging at times. I had a lot of, when the quarantine first happened, I was doing a lot, really creative, practicing, working on music. And then over the summer, I hardly touched the guitar at all, didn't really do anything, just wasn't feeling inspired at all. And then when Mike Pride called me about 3-layer cake, it was just something to focus on. It sort of brought me back into feeling creative and learning, fine tuning my Logic chops of editing and recording and splicing. And so that was fun to get into Logic and really learn it, learn all my shortcuts and learn the potential of Logic. I mean, you can do so much in there. What you can do at home is just really incredible. I mean, if I had this when I was like 14, would have been amazing, but or maybe not. I'm kind of glad I had what I had when I was coming up. But anyway, yeah. So it's been tough. It's been ups and downs and some breakthroughs musically too. Yeah. So I'm sure some people claim to have been so busy and creative the whole time. I can't really claim to have been able to sustain that, but
Everybody's different,
yeah,
there are guys who kind of came alive during it and
yeah,
got their video presence up and
right.
a lot of teaching and because that's most of them were on that path before.
Yeah,
And
if you had that role dialed in before, you were I feel like I'm ready for the next pandemic now.
yeah, we
Like,
all
and that's I think, or I mean, but
well,
yeah.
who knows. Yeah, did everybody use Logic or did you just
Yeah, we all use Logic. We all use Logic. Actually, no, Mike Pride used something else. I don't know what he may have used Pro Tools. I think
send wave files.
we just sent waves, and I got really good at sending stems. I really learned how to do that well. And so it was like a learning process all around. We all learned a lot from it. And that's fun because it's important. You need to know how to do that stuff because I did a lot of other, people hired me to do other remote recording. I did quite a bit of it during the pandemic, you know, people's projects that started before, and people had new projects, and figuring out how to make live streams sound really good with the UBS thing, and you're putting it, you know, so I taught myself a lot of good skills. You know, I mean, I'm not an engineer, but I know how to, it was good to learn how to make a nice track, and at the right dB level, you know, the whole thing, to be able to let people know you could do that.
Yeah, and I mean, it'll stand us all in good stead, even
Yeah.
if it becomes, because the whole business is changing as
Yeah.
well. I was going to ask you, I mean, once we do get back to whatever extent we do, is there any chance of you and Mike doing any?
Yeah, I think so. I think, well, we already started the next album. Mike Pride finished the drum tracks, and he sent them to Mike Watt but it's not going to come out for a year from now at least. But so we've started on the next one, like this one, and you can make a good record this way, you know. So we're gonna make the next one probably like remotely again, but we hope that in a year's time or less, we'll be able to do some concerts, you know. So I think we will someday.
Where's everybody located? I think Watt's on the West Coast.
He's in San Pedro, right near LA. Mike Pride is upstate in Port Chester, I think, and then I'm in Brooklyn. So yeah, it was fun to be able to take a long time on a record, you know. That was fun.
That's not the jazz way.
That's not the jazz way, but it was fun to do that. It was fun to be able to do that. Felt like felt luxurious, and I think we utilized the time well, and yeah, a lot of emailing though, a lot of sharing, and you had to be. I definitely got my organization went up a notch, you know, in terms of file. You know, my wife is really organized in her work. She's an editor, and I sort of learned a lot from her about organizing your folders and shortcuts on the keyboard. And I really worked on that, and that was something I'm got a lot of confidence in during quarantine, which I didn't, you know, expect to. Yeah, being organized is important. I'd say.
With things like that.
With things like that, yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Did you use Dropbox or?
I used WeTransfer and then Google Files, just in the email a lot, because my files weren't that large. You know, the songs ranged from like 2.5 minutes to 7 minutes. So, you know, if I sent Mike 2 or 3 waves per song, sometimes 4. The files weren't that big.
Yeah, it's interesting. You know, it just occurred to me that you were in a little bit of an enviable position in those times when they laid down the stuff first, because you had something to react to.
Yeah, I reacted to it, and I really tried to. Yeah, I think all of our instincts are. We all have good instincts, and we wanted to make it feel like I think just naturally we made it feel like we were in the same room. It just came out like that. I think we all share similar instincts and similar approaches to improvising. And
would anybody redo something in light of what somebody else had put on?
Not really. Maybe a couple of the solos. Some of the improvising people redid, mostly me probably, although Mike Pride redid some glockenspiel, and he played organ a little bit. He redid some edits, maybe we looped a couple of things here and there. Maybe he redid, fine-tuned stuff like that. But yeah, just mostly the solos. Like I would listen back, and since we had so much, usually you used to like doing a few takes and you got to live with it. But for this, I mean, I think on one solo, I maybe did, you know, I could do like as many takes as I wanted. 8 or 9 different takes over weeks, coming back to it. Oh, let me try it again. That was fun.
I guess there can be a downside to that.
There can be a downside too, of course. There was definitely moments of downside.
just overthinking it.
overthinking it.
But after, especially in the jazz world, after I'm sure you spending so many recording sessions where, like you say, it's one and done, or, you have to
Maybe you get,
take, but
yeah, because it's usually never going to be, if it's not your band and you're the guitar player or anybody improvising, and you play, they do a take, and if the parts are messed up, you're going to have to do it again. If like the bass player messes up, or the drummer, or the horn players or the vocalist don't have a good take, whatever, doesn't matter how awesome your solo was. That's not, so. Yeah, I remember my teacher in NEC, Randy Roos, he was in Orchestra Luna in the 70s, guitar player. He
he's
said,
a legend.
yeah, he said that nobody's gonna ever hire you for how you solo. Said your accompaniment, develop your accompaniment instincts. It's gonna be way more important to your livelihood. So that always stuck with me. But I don't know why I'm linking that to this. Oh yeah, solos.
Yeah, but they're fun, and
They're fun, of course. You need to do them, but of course, he said this to me in the midst of completely, self-absorption in college. All you wanted to do was take a solo.
right. But some, things like that, sometimes you need to hear them, even if they don't sink in then.
Oh yeah, it did sink in a little bit. I knew, I was like, he's right. So I always would be working on that, but it sunk in more. I always think of that. I always think about that because I think about all the other gigs that I get, and while a lot of them are based upon my own personal style, a lot of them people know me as like a accompanist to them, or a background player. So definitely helped out.
Do you get hired more for who you are and what you sound like these days, rather than?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think so. I think I have good instincts. I know in those situations where people call me to be myself, there's still moments where you kind of have to be partly yourself, and then there's moments where you can be fully yourself. So I think I have a good instinct about when I can be myself and when I have to hold back. So
And I'm curious, do you find that your more outplaying is more in demand these days than it maybe once was?
I don't know. I mean, I'm surprised sometimes some of the bands I play in, I won't name any names. I'm surprised that like I'm in the band sometimes. I mean, I know usually I'm there to disrupt or do something inappropriate, which I like, but yeah, I know. I guess as jazz now, jazz means so many things, of course, but there are more overt rock influences, I feel like, in a lot of the jazz that's happening in New York, for instance. So I find that sometimes, yeah, I get more calls for being sort of the oddball, and to come in and dirty up a cleaner band, or somebody wants that out kind of rock influenced intense bursts. So I find myself in that position a lot.
It just seems to be a trend. I mean,
Yeah,
by virtue of this online magazine I'm doing, the Guitar Mode,
yeah,
I follow over the years
yeah,
who's doing what, and what's going on. And I'm sure the Wilco thing had a big impact
sure.
on
Yeah,
that.
with Nels, yeah.
The hearing Nels disrupt
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
kind of alt country songs, and it became a thing
Sure.
where people started getting used to hearing those sounds. And then, in a world where Radiohead can be as big as they are, I think people are just, ears are being open to more unusual sounds, and they're starting to prize them more. So here's
Absolutely.
hoping
Yeah.
it's gonna
Let's keep it going.
work for you.
I
And
hope so. I hope there's more bands that want that, it's fun. I like it. I mean, yeah, as I get older and just more, I just want to do, I'm not as concerned with doing, it's more of like, this this thing, essentialism, like the disciplined pursuit of less that actually has a more meaningful is more meaningful to you. I'm sort of like in that sort of phase now where I once was like doing everything, doing millions of things. I'm trying to just, pull it back, and I can't do everything, and I can't be in every band that wants to have me play everything. It's just, so sort of fine tuning it down with hopes that can be more, more fulfilling kind of experiences. But I learned a lot. I mean, being in New York, playing in millions of bands and billions of gigs, and terrible sound situations and good sound situations, bad headphones in the studio and terrible amps, and like that experience that you gain from that is really, I just feel like you can't do that in many places. And it's made me, I mean, humans are very adaptable, as you see in the pandemic, but it's just made me a stronger player. I think a lot of things that have nothing to do with the guitar that you experience in New York just kind of make you. It's crazy though. Why does it have to be like that? I don't know. It's like, why do you want to torture yourself? Why do you want to do it? But there's something about it.
Yeah, I mean, it builds character.
It builds character. Yeah, playing out of shitty amps, but now I have my amp game together. So I also got a car during quarantine, which aids your amp game in New York if you have a car. So
right,
I did a session the other night at the studio with my trio, and I brought my trainer. And this studio has like 65 vintage Fenders and 30 Marshall Plexis, and they're like, "Oh, you brought your amp? We have plenty of amps." And I'm just like, "Nah, bringing my amp now," because my thing is weird. My guitar thing is not really guitaristic, like my sound and tone. It's not like, yeah, man, plug into a 70s Princeton reverb, and like, it's just not my thing. So I need to now being able to bring my gear. I feel like I've done too much of that play out of whatever's there type of thing. But with the trusty lunchbox has saved me. All you guitar players out there who hate Fenders and whatever the hell you get at venues, bring your lunchbox, plug it in, go direct, plug it in, put it in the PA, get it in your monitor, make a record with Mike Watt. Lunchbox will save the day. That's my ad for Lunchbox.
Right. Well, you've built your sound around these sounds. I mean,
yeah.
I remember doing a gig at not the living room, Rockwood, the old.
Oh yeah.
And I he had a Bogner amp there.
Oh yeah, I remember playing out of that.
Yeah, I plugged into it. I'm playing, and it's like I've been driving a Volkswagen, and now I'm driving a.
Yeah, exactly. I like those amps actually. I like those.
Amp, but I don't care how good it is. I don't know how to use it.
Exactly.
Get what you can get out of it. So the next time I just brought my own amp, Bogner or no Bogner.
Bogner is like heavy. It's like you need to sit with that thing to. Yeah, there's some amps to just plug into, and like especially for like a living room gig. Yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on your situation. Like on the other end, I knew a guitarist out in San Francisco, and she did tons of fly dates, and she finally just broke down and bought herself a twin reverb because she said, she said, I can ask for a matchless, I can ask for whatever,
right, but I'm never gonna get it.
I'm not gonna get it, so I might as well know how to play through. Get a good sound through what I'm going to get. And so
that's smart. That's really smart. You just got to give in, get the twin reverb or whatever, and just play with it. I have seen in some of the European festivals I played at, the bigger ones, I've seen really specific backline needs, but that's like once every 5 years. Well, yeah. I do ask for a PV 5150 head because I love that head, that PV Van Halen tube amp. And I've used that on a lot of my records. And I always ask for that just to see, because you see them sometimes out there, and I love that amp.
Common. I mean, and I think music stores carry it. That's kind of what it's determined is, what are people buying?
Yeah, what are people buying?
What do people have? If you're using something obscure, like if you're trying to get a trainer, as great an amp as it is.
In Canada, I'll ask for it in Canada, but as great of an amp as you're never going to get that. When are you going to get that? It's like
in America.
In America, you're not going to get that. But yeah, my dream, the newest line of the EVH amps, I think Fender makes them now. I don't think PV makes them anymore.
Mhm.
But man, those are really expensive. But that's someday I'd love to have one of those, because you know something, those 5150s, the early 90s ones, that are the clean channel on those are awesome. And the breakup that you can get, you don't need any, if you have one of those, you don't need any pedals, first of all. You don't need distortion pedals, which I love that, because the gain stages on those things are like absolutely insane. But the clean channel on those amps are great. Tube amp, clean. Anyway, whatever. That's a dream. But a studio that I record a lot at here, because that amp, the 5150, has been adopted by metal bands. Like the early versions of the EVH, like the block letter one, PV, 5150, metal guys and girls and people, they love that amp. So the studio I go to, Colin Marson, the engineer, he has like 3 5150 heads, and I always use them.
Do they sound good if you're not cranking them up loud?
Yes, they sound incredible if you're not cranking that loud, because recently after Eddie passed, there's all these Sunset Sound videos up of engineers who worked on the records. And there was this one famous studio guitar player guy who was friends with Eddie, and they were recording Fair Warning, and came in, and Eddie wanted to show him his amp and his setup. And one of the things the guy remembers is that the amp wasn't loud. He said it was the most incredible sounding amp he had ever heard Eddie playing out of, like his original one, but it wasn't loud. And I think that the other awesome thing about that amp is you can get an insanely overdriven sound, sounding really good at a low volume. Which on a Fender, get a Fender Twin to sound good at a low volume. It's not going to happen.
Yeah.
Get a Fender, any of those Fenders, you can't get the Trainer or the Magnetone at a low volume, sounding incredible.
Well, that's another thing, as we're talking about playing and growing up playing in New York. You know, you have to learn how to get a good sound volume, because it's not like if you grow up in the Midwest, you play these bars with 1,000 people in them, and
you just cranking it. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, growing up, and it's actually, yeah, it's still the same. I mean, you're playing these clubs in New York, people are living upstairs. You can't
Do it. And also, as a side person, you're not. If often I'm sometimes the only amplified instrument, if I'm playing like in a klezmer group, or I'm playing with a jazz granite rehearsal, often it's you and the bass, and nobody else has amps. So you have to learn how to get a good sound at a low volume and not be too loud, and blend, and try to blend with the twin reverb. I mean, I learned how to do it, but and that's why the Lunchbox is actually incredible, because this thing sounds good at a low volume. And you can blend. If you're in a band with like a saxophone, piano, and drums, and no bass, you're probably the only person amplified. So you got to learn how to get a good sound at a low volume, because you don't want to be the loud person, because nobody.
Well, they already consider you the loud person.
Yeah, they already consider you the loud person. I mean, some people do it well. Some people can be the loud person well. Like I won't name any names, but there are people who are good at being the loud person, because they know when to be loud. And
secret tip, though, the next time you get stuck with a twin reverb,
what is the tip?
Take the 2 outside tubes out, or the 2 inside tubes out.
I can do that?
Yeah.
On the far outside, just pull them out?
Outside of the 2 inside.
And that brings the voltage down?
Here in New York.
It brings the voltage down?
Yeah, cuts it in half, pretty much.
And people don't care. Oh God, that's a good tip.
It doesn't hurt the amp. I mean, you just, while if you're using a rental or whatever it is, you just put the tubes on the, you wrap them in a towel or something and stick them somewhere, and then put them back in when you're done.
Yeah, they just fit right in, right? They just go in.
Yeah, they just come out and go in. But
yeah, that's great. That's a good tip. Thanks. I'm definitely going to do that.
Another tip is, don't ever pull that little prong that comes out of a 3-prong plug off.
Oh, right. Yeah. Don't. That grounds it.
Executing myself like that once.
Oh, don't do it. Yeah. No, I don't. I won't touch that. That's beyond my skill set.
Well, great talking to you, Brad.
Yeah. Thanks so much. This was really fun.